The wind tore across the Arizona basin with a howl so sharp it sounded like grief itself. Caleb, Dusty Hawkins tasted sand on his tongue before he tasted blood, a copper tang that told him the bullet hadn't missed by much. 40 paces ahead, his single chestnut mare danced in circles, reins trailing, eyes white with panic. Between him and the horse lay the figure that had caused the trouble, a young Apache woman, half-conscious, soaked in her own sweat and in someone else's blood. Dusty hadn't seen who shot her. One moment the trail was empty. The next, a crack split the air and she stumbled from the rocks clutching her side. Instinct overran caution. He dragged her behind a mesquite bush while more shots skipped off the stones. Whoever wanted her dead retreated once they saw he could shoot back. Now, the desert was silent except for her ragged breathing. He pressed a ripped sleeve against the wound in her ribs. "Stay with me," he muttered, though he doubted she understood English. Her eyes fluttered open, dark, feral, refusing to beg. Dusty glanced at his mare. Nearest army post sat 2 days south, the Chiricahua Mountains, where rumor said Apaches still held hidden camps, were 1 hard day north if you rode without rest. On foot, you die before sunset. A man with sense would ride away and fetch cavalry. A man without sense would do what he did next. He lifted the woman, set her sideways across the saddle, cinched his canteen to her wrist so she wouldn't drop it, then slapped the mare's hindquarters. "Go on, girl, take her home." The horse bolted, hooves drumming over cracked earth until dust swallowed them both. Now he was alone, bleeding, unhorsed, and far too close to the border where white men weren't welcome. He wrapped his arm with what fabric remained, oriented himself by the distant purple ridge, and started walking north. Night fell like ink. Coyotes yipped in the distance, and once he thought he saw torchlight floating between the saguaros, but the heat shimmer played tricks. He walked until the stars blurred, then walked some more. At dawn, silhouettes rose ahead, men on ponies, long hair threaded with otter fur, rifles leveled. Dusty stopped, lifted empty hands. The mare trotted back into view led by the woman he'd saved. She was still pale, her arm bound with fresh yucca fibers, but she sat straight as a spear. Words flew between her and the warriors, sharp, guttural, seasoned with disbelief. At one command, 2 riders dismounted, bound Dusty's wrists, and shoved him forward. They traveled through a slit canyon no outsider was meant to find, emerging into a basin cradled by sheer rock walls. Wickiups clustered like dark shells, smoke spiraled from cook fires, painted shields caught the sun. Children paused their play to stare at the captured cowboy. Dusty was forced to kneel before an elder whose hair was snow-white except for a single black braid. His name, he learned, was Nantan. Beside him stood Kali, younger, broad-shouldered, eyes that burned like iron in a forge. The woman, Aylin, spoke rapidly. When she finished, Nantan regarded Dusty as though weighing the grains of sand left in an hourglass. Kali stepped forward. In English as rough as gravel he said, "You gave horse." "Why?" Dusty swallowed. "So she could live." Kali's jaw tightened. "Or so you find camp." Aylin interrupted, voice trembling yet fierce. Nantan raised a hand for silence. He addressed Dusty in Apache, then repeated slowly in English, "A gift of a horse binds spirits. But a man who knows our path is danger. 3 sunsets you stay. We watch heart. Then we decide." Dusty was led to a stake near the edge of camp. His bonds were cut, though 2 sentries remained within reach of their bows. Aylin approached once, placed a gourd of pinole beside him, then returned to the healer's lodge. She never spoke. Under the first night sky, distant rifle fire crackled beyond the canyon, echoes of men still hunting. The guard stiffened. Dusty understood the sound, repeaters, maybe Spencer carbines, the kind bounty crews favored. Second day, Dusty helped grind corn for an old woman whose hands shook too badly to work. Children lingered, fascinated by the stranger whose skin burned red under the sun and who whistled tunes they'd never heard. When Kali saw this, his mouth pressed thinner. That afternoon he marched Dusty to a flat rock, handed him a war club, and motioned to strike a suspended deer pelvis until it shattered. Dusty swung, pain lancing through his torn shoulder, but the bone cracked on the third blow. Kali gave a curt nod. Dusty couldn't tell if it was approval or confirmation of weakness. At dusk, Aylin limped over. She placed his canteen in his lap, fingers brushing his just once. He saw questions in her gaze, regret, perhaps gratitude. Before words formed, a shout erupted from the canyon mouth. Scouts returned, faces dark with alarm. Bounty men, 10, maybe more, camped 5 miles away, tracking the chestnut mare's print straight toward the hidden basin. Panic rippled through the camp. Women gathered belongings, warriors hurried to paint their faces. Nantan convened the council. Dusty, still cooling under suspicion, was shoved beside Aylin inside the largest wickiup while elders argued. He whispered, "They followed the horse." "My fault." She answered in accented English, "Your gift saved me. Now we save tribe." Her eyes shone with something between resolve and sorrow. Outside, tempers rose until Kali's booming voice silenced all. Minutes later, he ducked inside. He knelt before Aylin, not Dusty. "Nadana," he said, using her child name, "war comes. You choose his fate." Aylin's throat worked. She looked at Dusty. "He fights," she said. Kali stood. "Then blood of 2 peoples will mix tonight." Moonless black blanketed the basin. Warriors crept along ledges, women and children slipped into a concealed ravine behind the camp. Dusty was handed back his own Springfield rifle, emptied of cartridges. Aylin pressed 4 fresh rounds into his palm. "If you run, Kali kills you first," she murmured. "If you stay, maybe you live." The first bounty hunter stumbled into the kill zone just after midnight. A silent arrow took him through the throat. Gunfire answered, and the canyon erupted in flickers of orange and thunder. Dusty loaded, fired, reloaded, shoulders screaming. He saw Aylin wield a traded Colt Navy, her stance steady despite blood seeping through her bandage. At one point a hunter rushed her flank. Dusty dropped him with a shot that split the night open like lightning. Minutes turned eternal. Then sudden quiet. Smoke drifted, carrying the stench of spent powder and hot iron. 6 bounty men lay dead, the rest fled into darkness. Kali surveyed the field. He approached Dusty, spear dripping scarlet, and stared long enough for fear to congeal. Then he offered the spear, but first. Nantan's voice echoed from the ridge, "The horse gift is repaid with life gift. The stranger is brother." At dawn, Aylin brought the chestnut mare to Dusty. "She is yours," she said softly, "but her path knows us now." Dusty stroked the mare's neck. He met Aylin's eyes and saw in them a road he hadn't planned to walk, a mystery as vast as the desert and twice as dangerous. Behind them, the tribe prepared to move deeper into the mountains, shadows against the rising sun. Ahead lay only silent ridges and the uncertain mercy of an unforgiving land. Dusty swung into the saddle, feeling the weight of new bonds, ties forged by a single act of mercy and tempered in the fierce fire of trust. The desert silence after Gunsmoke felt too complete, as though sound itself had been shot and left to bleed out on the stones. Caleb, Dusty, Hawkins rode at the rear of the Apache column in dawn's violet gloom, a lone white ripple in a river of bareback ponies. Behind them the battlefield, littered with bounty men and half-buried cartridge brass, already belonged to the circling vultures. Ahead stood ridges so serrated they seemed forged to cut travelers from the rest of the world. Every hoof beat, every clink of tack whispered the same warning, nowhere left to turn back. Aylin, bandaged but unbowed, rode a paint gelding 3 lengths forward. When her dark braid swung across the light, Caleb saw fresh crimson soaking the doeskin at her ribs. He wanted to urge her to rest. He said nothing. Among Apaches, pity was an insult unless invited. Nantan called the first halt in the lee of a sandstone buttress veined with malachite. Thin shade pooled like oil, warriors slid to the ground and faced east, murmuring a dawn blessing. Caleb copied the posture, earning a flicker of approval from an old woman who carried a gourd rattle carved with spiral suns. When the prayer ended, scarce water was shared cup to cup. No one drank before the horses. Kali broke the silence, turning to Caleb with flint in his gaze. You ride with us, yet you owe us truth. What track lies inside your heart? Caleb had rehearsed answers all night, words about honor, about how a man couldn't call himself human if he turned away from a dying girl. Under Kali's stare those answers felt thin as wind-worn cloth. Finally he said, I lost every brand and bale I ever worked for. All that's left standing is whatever I do next. Kali angled his head, parsing the reply the way he might study storm clouds for hidden lightning. Then he nodded once, accepting the riddle if not the man. The march resumed, sliding through a slot canyon so narrow Caleb's stirrups scraped stone. Petroglyphs older than the Spanish watched from the walls, spiral galaxies, horned dancers, bighorn sheep cresting invisible mesas. Dust motes drifted in shafts of gold. Somewhere high above, a raven croaked. Aelin glanced back, as though hearing an omen in the cry, but pressed on without breaking pace. By mid-morning the canyon widened into a box valley choked with cottonwoods. A thin creek shivered over quartz pebbles, pure treasure in that thirsty land. Here the people made camp, tents of buffalo hide merging with willow huts that had stood since Cochise himself sheltered fugitives beneath their thatch. Caleb unsaddled his chestnut, checked the hooves for stone bruises, then volunteered for water duty. 2 young braves, Haske and Red Feather, watched him handle the skins with the silent astonishment city folk reserve for jugglers. When Caleb smiled, Red Feather looked away, cheeks puffing with unspoken questions. Lunch was pinole, tepary beans, and mesquite cakes sweet as molasses. Aelin ate near the healer's shelter, head bowed, fingers trembling only when pain hooked deeper than pride could conceal. Caleb carried her a fresh clay cup of cool creek water. She thanked him with a nod, then surprised him with English. The chief speaks tonight. Decide where we go, north to White Mountains or west to River. Both full of soldiers. Caleb crouched, meeting her eyes. Where do you want to go? She considered. Where breath is not hunted. Then a shadow crossed her features and she added, quieter, but breath is always hunted. Evening stained distant cloud towers the color of wounded flesh. Fires sparked across camp, smoke folded into the sky until stars winked back like hot bullet holes. Around the central blaze the council gathered. Kali unrolled a Spanish map blistered by candle wax. Nantan placed 3 small stones to mark Los Coyote supply trails. Caleb studied the lines, remembered the Mesa Buttes, the telegraph poles, the Union Pacific spur where county deputies sold information to the highest bidder. He traced a finger southwest. Here, he said, tapping a gully named Calico, Washington, rail spur turns north, boxcars sit locked 3 days a week waiting for mules. Crates of ammunition, sometimes cannons headed for Fort Lowell. Hardly guarded after dark. Murmurs bloomed like banked embers. Aelin's gaze sharpened. Steel guns from iron snakes, she whispered, half awe, half dread. Arguments rose, some said flight was wiser, others, that no valley could stay hidden long. Nantan listened until the desert wind drowned voices, then spoke. When fire circles the village, walls become cages. Better we meet flame with river. Eyes turned to Caleb. He felt like a card others wished to play but feared to hold. At last Kali slapped the map flat. We ride at moon high. Take iron from the white man to stop white bullets. Any who fear ghosts may stay. Not a soul moved. The hours before departure wound slow. Warriors painted faces in obsidian streaks, women twisted bundles of yucca cord and filled bladders with cornmeal for the road. Caleb packed spare rifle parts scavenged from the bounty men, oiled his Springfield, and clipped an old Wells Fargo star inside his duster pocket, a talisman of another life. At the edge of camp Red Feather approached, offering a necklace strung with bone beads. For luck, the boy said, thrusting it into Caleb's palm then darting off before thanks could follow. Moonrise silvered the cliffs. The raiding party, 15 riders plus Aelin as medic, slipped from the valley like smoke escaping a chimney. They kept no torches, the night's black canvas was enough. Caleb rode beside Aylin, whose breaths hissed with each step of her paint pony. "You should be resting," he muttered. She ignored the warning, eyes fixed on whatever horizon only she could see. They crossed scrub plains where saguaro arms lifted prayers to unseen gods. Twice they halted, listening to coyotes' false alarms. Near midnight they reached Calico Wash, rail tracks gleaming dull beneath the moon. 2 lanterns bobbed outside a boxcar, the only guards, one puffing a slim cigarillo, the other humming 2 madre songs to keep coyotes at bay. Kali wordlessly assigned positions. Caleb crept with Red Feather along a culvert until they lay beneath the planks of a siding spur. Above them boot heels tapped, oblivious. The plan was simple: cut telegraph wires, slip chloroformed rag over the first guard, arrow for the second, then lever boxes down a cargo ramp. Simple plans die young. A whistle shrieked, 3 short blasts from farther east, unexpected traffic. Both guards froze, squinting into the dark. Caleb's heart kicked. If another train rattled through, crew lamps would paint the wash brighter than noon. No time. He motioned urgency. Red Feather knocked an arrow. They rose like twin phantoms. Cloth smothered the humming guard, the arrow thunked into the smoker's throat before smoke finished its swirl. Bodies dropped with soft thuds. Caleb signaled success, then shimmied up the ramp. Inside the car, wooden crates towered, stenciled U.S. Ordnance Cal .45-70, 500 rounds. Caleb's breath hissed between his teeth. Jackpot, but heavy as sin. Outside, hoof sounds approached. The unknown train? No, single horse, fast. Caleb peeked, a telegraph dispatcher galloping to check the silent line. Kali's silhouette melted onto the trail, tomahawk raised. Caleb waved frantically, too late. Steel flashed, the rider crumpled. Unlucky soul, but unlucky souls carried messages. Caleb searched the saddlebags, a sealed envelope, Fort Bowie seal. Aylin joined him. By firelight from a stolen lantern she read the Spanish-English dispatch aloud: coyotes to deliver 20 rifles, payroll gold, and 10 Apache scalps by next quarter moon. Gold, Caleb muttered. Always gold. Kali's eyes glittered. Gold brings bluecoats quicker than bullets. They loaded ammo into rawhide slings until ponies groaned beneath the weight. Before leaving, Caleb used lantern oil to soak the remaining crates, tossed the cigarillo still clinging to the dead guard's lips onto the pile. Flames whooshed. Miles away, a telegraph operator would wonder why his signal froze in the wire. Dawn found them in a ravine of red basalt. Exhaustion draped every shoulder. Aylin's wound reopened, blood webbed across her side, but she refused to dismount until camp was set. Caleb helped lay her on a bed of sagebrush. The healer crushed dried datura, mixing paste to dull pain. Caleb hovered until Aylin caught his sleeve. "Sit," she commanded. He obeyed. In halting English she recited a tale. Long ago a hawk freed from a snare chose never again to fly north where wires waited. "You are hawk," she whispered, eyelids fluttering. "But wires run everywhere now." Then sleep claimed her. 3 days passed in uneasy peace. The stolen Spencers were cleaned and tested, warriors drilled in volleys. Children practiced with blunt arrows, imitating Caleb's draw. At dusk, he taught Red Feather a Missouri River shanty. The boy laughed until breathless, protesting the nonsense of catfish bigger than canoes. Aylin watched, eyes soft, though fatigue lined her face deeper each night. On the 4th dawn, lookout cries shattered the calm. Dust plume on the southeast horizon, Los Coyotes and perhaps 30 dragoons riding to avenge theft and claim scalps promised by the disappeared courier. Nantan ordered the village moved into the labyrinth of Salt Canyon, a natural fortress of sheer walls honeycombed with caves. Warriors, Caleb among them, dug rifle pits at the choke point where the canyon narrowed to a single wagon length. Kali placed Aylin in a limestone alcove over the line, field nurse but also last defense, rifle across her lap. Caleb took position beside a balancing rock. From there he could command the approach yet still glimpse Aylin by craning left. Morning baked the stones, sweat streaked gun oil down his wrists. Around noon, hoof thunder echoed. First the Spanish curses of coyotes, then the clipped commands of a cavalry sergeant. A white kerchief fluttered. A Mexican vaquero rode forward, hat high, shouting parley. Kali answered with silence. The vaquero named a price for the ammunition, a higher price for the white trader among them, an open grave for the Apaches who dared resist President Arthur's frontier. Caleb felt his pulse hammer. He was done trading lives for money. When the vaquero turned away in contempt, Caleb whispered to Kali. "Shoot the horse." Confusion flickered, then understanding. Caleb's first bullet punched through the animal's neck, it collapsed, flinging the envoy into cactus. War whoop split the canyon. The siege began. Coyotes dismounted, using scrub and boulders, soldiers formed skirmish lines. Spencer fire cracked from the cliffs, dropping 2 attackers before they reached cover. The enemy tested every rock, every dead agave. Hours stretched. Bullets whined. A ricochet tore Caleb's hat brim. He kept loading, kept breathing. Mid-afternoon a flank squad hauled a Gatling gun onto a knoll, hand-cranked death that could shave cliff faces. Caleb cursed. Aylin signaled by mirror flash, she saw it too. 1 magazine drum of vengeance could massacre the canyon. Kali crawled to Caleb. "Only you and I can circle, take hill from back," he said. Caleb surveyed the ascent, loose shale, 200-foot climb under enemy sight. Certain suicide. He nodded. They belly-crawled through a limestone arroyo, scaling juniper roots, clinging to shadows until sun slipped behind buttes. At the ridge back they found 2 coyotes manning the Gatling's crank while the sergeant calibrated range. Kali motioned 3, 2, 1. They attacked. Caleb's knife found the first throat, Kali's tomahawk took the second. The sergeant fired his revolver wild, Caleb wrestled him, both tumbling against the gun carriage. A shot grazed Caleb's ribs. Before a second trigger squeeze, Kali's tomahawk buried deep. Silence returned. They turned the Gatling toward the attacker's rear flank. Caleb cranked. Brass casings danced like locusts. Chaos erupted below, horses screaming, men scattering from what they believed impossible. When ammo belt ran dry, dust cleared to reveal bodies strewn where no Apache bullet could have reached. Skirmish lines broke. Soldiers fled first, coyotes after, some ditching saddles to lighten load. Caleb watched until dust deformed them into ghosts. Back in the canyon, cheers met their return. The healer bound Caleb's ribs, Aylin pressed her forehead to his, whispering a prayer of cedar smoke and river light. Kali raised both their arms, announcing the enemy's rout and spoils, rifles, mules, crates of bluecoat rations, enough to feed the village through winter. That night the tribe danced victory around juniper fires. Sparks swirled into the vault of stars. Nantan handed Caleb a medicine bundle, eagle feather, flint, turquoise splinter. Hawk who breaks wires, the chief intoned, belongs to sky but also to ground where brothers wait. Later Caleb walked the canyon rim with Aylin. Moonlight silvered her cheek, the fresh bandage, the faint smile forming when he asked what came next. "We follow greener water," she said. "But rivers twist. You may choose another bend." Caleb stared across endless badlands, hearing train whistles on distant tracks. "Rails run straight," he said. "Yet men on them go in circles." She touched his chest. "Then rest your circle here a while." Below, warriors unhitched mules, children chased fireflies rare as rain, elders sang stories of a hawk who freed himself only to guide others through storm. Caleb's chestnut nickered softly, as though agreeing that the trail, for now, was good. He turned to Aylin. "I'll stay till your ribs knit, and maybe a season longer." She nodded, eyes reflecting starlight like polished obsidian. "A season can become a lifetime if you breathe slow." Far off, the pulsing glow of telegraph stations winked and died as damaged crews still hunted for severed lines. The desert reclaimed every trace by dawn, leaving wind to tell a tale few would believe, of a cowboy who traded a horse for a stranger's life and found in that fierce bargain a home no map could ever draw.